We're interviewing Carly Schaecter. She's our guest. She's Senior Manager, Global Regulatory Advertising and Promotions at Moderna. Obviously, this does not represent her or Moderna's position. This is just an initial thought process. This is simply educational content. But we do explore questions like, why should the ad promo get involved in VR? Using VR to promote biologics, drugs, or devices. What was Carly's first reaction to looking at VR? Building a team for VR projects. Do you need an actual VR expert? Do you need to be a VR expert yourself? How do you evaluate VR's value? Why use VR compared to AR, virtual reality compared to augmented reality? What is the difference? What are the controlling systems? How do you assess gamification from a PRC or promotional review perspective? Is there a duty to correct misinformation in VR? How do you review VR content in or via the MLR process? And finally, what are the challenges and lessons while using VR? And I am Darshan Kulkarni, Principal Attorney at the Kulkarni Law Firm. I focus my attention on FDA-regulated companies and their service providers, including issues involving medical affairs, clinical research, and drug advertising. Let's get into it. If you like this type of content, please like, subscribe, share. It really helps the channel. First of all, why did you guys get involved with VR? Why is it something you guys are considering?
Yeah, so at Moderna, there is a very, very big appetite for, adopting new technologies and just being at the forefront of any kind of technology. And so this was something that was pitched to us by our commercial team. We use different kinds of VR, headsets, and I would just say different types of VR experiences in lots of different congresses. That's the main, place that I'm seeing the use of VR.
From a promotional drug device, biologics promotional perspective, I'm just visualizing how you use that.
Yeah, the context that I've seen it in mostly is more educational, right? So we're walking folks through like mechanisms of action. We're having different kinds of like almost gamified experiences that are teaching about our product, PI, just different information that involves like some kind of physical interaction by the user.
Oh, so you guys are actually going into actual, not just VR, but actually engaging with the VR itself.
Yeah.
So the first time they raised this to you, we want to do VR. What was your reaction to that? Outside, I just want to run away from this.
I, try and come at it with like, okay, what is the final goal of this? Like, what is our final experience? What do we want that to look like? So that's probably my first thought. My second thought is like, okay, how do we get to every single step along the way? And I think back to all of the things that I know that I have done, like, video type of experiences, or just other types of Congress booths.
When someone reaches out to you and goes, I have a concept for VR in education, though it'll be promotional in nature, how do you begin parsing? What team do you want around you when you start?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a kind of conversation that will come up within the MLR team's meeting. How our concept reviews work here is we kind of have two different levels of concept review. We have like a more informal one where it's just like, okay, we'll put on X amount of time and just kind of have the conversation. And then we have a more formalized concept review, which, increasingly we've been pushing the team to put these types of concepts into Viva so that we can actually make comments on the concept itself and note, where we need a discussion.
Perspective. Did you go, can we have someone come explain VR to us? Or did they go, here, put on this VR headset. Now you know everything you need to know about VR. Like how did that concept start?
Yeah, it was probably a kind of a mix in between, because I don't think anyone that I'm working with in my, regular MLR team is a, VR master or is a programmer, right? So ideally, like we would have someone who's either from the agency that's pulling in like whatever the VR technology or like, whatever software they're using, someone who can come in and be that subject matter expert to answer any questions. But This was something I had brought up in my talk. Like, it's really important to make sure that when you have the final experience or you're live in your booth or something, that someone knows how to program or reprogram or fix any bugs within the system. Because that happened to me, that happened to my team.
So agency comes out and says, you know what? Everyone else has pitched you two-dimensional stuff. We're going 3D. Fine. Do they come in and tell you the value, or now is it on the marketers to go, we heard from these guys, it'd be a really cool idea. Will you guys buy into this? Like, how do you conceptualize this conversation? Or do you even interact with the agency?
I think I might have a really specific take on this. Like, it's not necessarily my job as the regulatory reviewer to parse out the value of a specific type of piece or experience. Like, it's my job to look at, okay, what are the regulatory constraints and can we make this happen? Because I'm assuming my commercial colleagues have already looked at this and decided that, yes, we do see a value in this kind of experience. So that might just be a level of trust that I have. But I think, like, yeah, if you trust your marketers, if you trust the team that you're working with, then you would trust that, yes, they do see a value. But yes, we do bring on our agency to, you know, speak and help represent within our MLR meetings. And I've found that that's been extremely valuable. Oftentimes, like, they'll know a little bit more about something than our own internal commercial folks will. And that's why we hire them. So, you know, it makes total sense.
Someone pitches VR to you, the first thought that goes through my mind is, why VR? Why not AR? Why not augmented reality versus virtual reality? And not because one is better than the other, but why did you make that design decision?
You know, I have a feeling sometimes that the answer is just maybe because we can, because it's cool, right? Because it would offer this unique kind of experience. And I think that's a totally valid answer, to be fair.
Absolutely.
Like, especially if you're talking about something like an MOA overview or, you know, an educational type of piece. Like, I also think it would be cool. It's very interactive for the person who's experiencing it.
Can these systems be controlled in terms of the interactivity with the real world? I thought that the user can single-handedly decide that, or am I wrong?
Okay, so in my experience, we've done a couple of different types of, like, projects. We've done ones where you're sort of like looking at a screen and you're actually physically moving your body to, like, select different things and perform different activities. And then I've also reviewed experiences where you're putting on goggles and you're fully immersed in an experience. And so can those things be controlled? Like, I would suggest that whatever the experience is that you're reviewing is kind of set so that people understand these are the directions, like, this is how I'm going to go about interacting with, you know, this piece and going through this, you know, experience or game or whatever it is.
Do you, from a PRC perspective, evaluate gamification?
There are certain countries where you can't do any type of gamification, right? So this is coming more from a US lens, where I know that we are able to do different types of games.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the same thing holds. Like, I would not want to probably approve something that's like shooting down a competitor product or shooting down a different MOA. I would really push the team to focus on what is our product and what is our message, and making, you know, whatever the game or activity is about our product. So it's not really a comparison, or it's not really like, you know, we're shooting down something else to make our thing the winner, right?
Which really takes us to this next question, this idea that the FDA, as you know, recently put out this correcting misinformation guidance. How does that play into a world where you're actually gamifying and there's so much hardcore coding and there's a VR process associated with it? The entire analysis, how do you correct misinformation in that context?
I don't know that it's going to really change practice now. Like, I think most companies kind of default to just not interacting with comments and not sort of, you know, barking up that tree. And I think it's very difficult to control misinformation on the internet, like, just for anyone, right? And so if you start to correct misinformation that you spot in one, one area, how are you making sure that you're correcting it everywhere, right? And how is that controlling for, any type of thing that someone could say? And how do you even have the resources to be monitoring and correcting all of this misinformation? There's like a big logistical kind of limitation, I think, with that guidance.
So I'm going to challenge you a little bit on this, because what I'm thinking about is there was a whole guidance going back, I want to go 5, 7, 10 years, where they had a whole conversation. How do you deal with user-generated content? And this idea is that if you control the channel, you have a responsibility to control the conversations that are happening in it. The point being, it's MRSA versus VRE, and you go, oh, this can cure VRE too, VRE as well. And the other guy goes, isn't that awesome? Now, do you have a responsibility because you control that VR headset, you control the channel to correct that misinformation?
Yes.
And how will that play out?
So I would ask the question, like, how did we get here where we're shooting down multiple different bugs that your product is not indicated? That would kind of be an issue that I would hope would be brought up at the MLR level. Like, I don't think that, in these types of experiences, we still have to represent the product, accurately.
Yeah.
And one of the disclaimers that I would give is that, okay, this is virtual reality. This is still not reality, right? So any experience that you have, you still need to, like, in good faith, be representing your product and claims about your product in a way that fits in with the regulation. So to me, like, having even the option of being able to, like, interact with things that your product is just not indicated for, that rings an alarm for me.
Going to that next phase where we're now in the PRC meeting, if you will, how are they uploading this into Viva or whatever app they're using? Are they uploading screenshots? Are they uploading the app and saying, check it out? Or are they going, here's experience the environment?
So that's definitely something that I've dealt with. How we have done it in the past is multiple rounds of review. Ideally, one of the first rounds would be a storyboard so that you're walking through what the experience is and, any type of audio or like a visual script for the experience. But then it gets housed in Viva basically as a video, right? Viva doesn't have the capabilities to offer a VR experience right now. And so that is sort of one of the holdouts with this. But then I would also say, like, if you're uploading it and approving it in Viva as a video experience, it becomes even more important to have a live review of the experience before it's actually used, and to certify, at least verbally, like with your team, okay, I did look this over and this matches exactly what we thought the experience was going to be and what the video had. Within Viva. So yeah, it's like the review isn't complete until you actually sit through it and do it live.
What are the biggest mistakes you've seen so far or done so far where you went, I'd do it differently the next time around?
I think some things that happen are just sort of tech issues, things just visually maybe not being like clear enough, light enough, big enough within the screen. I've had, while I'm looking over some of these, in the goggles, like, just, it's programmed totally wrong. It's like the last version of the piece, or like something about it is just, it has like the wrong, version of ISI or something. So that's something that we would have to like correct right then and there.
Wonderful. If you have questions and you need some legal advice, feel free to reach out to me. But this was wonderful, Carly. Thank you so much. And before we go, one last thing, any parting words?
I don't know. Happy reviewing. I think that's what I'll leave you with. Happy reviewing.